So today is a first done. We've got our own first ever in-house creative director, right?
Another first. We love a first,
mate. Smashing.
We're only doing first now. So if you're samey, you're not going on, right?
Yeah,
That's it.
blimey. Yeah, we're going to push the boundaries. So it's Michael Lee from Oatly. That's got a nice ring to it. He.
I'm really looking forward to it. We've talked about Oatly so much.
Yeah, it's nearly Economist. I mean, for those people who don't like it, Steve Gash, we apologise for this podcast, but mostly, I mean, with the backing of Heg and Dave Dye, I think we're on a good wicket here, aren't we, mate?
I think we just lost Steve Gash.
Shit! So
he's gone. Oh shit! Oatly, no, not listening to that. I'm off.
So we're down to single figures, listeners.
He's going to go and listen to the Got Milk podcast just as a retort to the stuff that we're going to talk about today.
Ben Kay is going to do a Steve Gash special. So yeah, we've been longing to do this, and sorry, apologies to Michael, because we had to cancel him the other week. But I'm massively looking forward to this. I got to say, I like the work. I didn't love it, and now I love it because it's the relentlessness and its wit and its charm and its just ability to zag when it should be zigging, and it's just great. And I love the way their media is just big fuck off murals. How do they get them? How does it work globally? Just so many questions. Who does the copy on the pack? Everything. I just want to know.
I've always liked it, and I think it's because I really enjoyed their tone. In fact, before I saw any of their out of home, we had cartons of it arriving here because we've been on the anti-milk brigade for a while. So I still can't have it on the cereal.
Yeah, you're ahead of the curve. See, right. So just appropriately for today, I have had Oatly with my porridge, and I can report it went down very well.
What did you put on top of your porridge when you're making it?
So I think,
you put a bit of brown sugar on it or something?
Good question. This could be a whole episode in itself. Right. No, used to when I was a kid, but now it has to be syrup dropped from a great height, like a child watching it make patterns. But then also, because I'm a man of a certain age, I have to have flaxseed on the top.
Oh, right. What is that, just to help the huge turds come out?
Oh, my God. It's like it was there as an open goal.
Right.
I think on that note, we need to lock this down and go and get Michael.
That was pretty good. You have to admit, that was pretty good.
That's fucking good. That was good.
It's just so quick in here. It's just...
But do you know what? I teased you up the flaxseed. I didn't know where that flaxseed was coming from. It just came out. I thought, should I be putting that out there?
I bet it just came out.
No, but I've been having some problems downstairs. It's either not coming out fast enough or it's coming out too fast. So I'm on a sticky wicket on that front.
Very sticky wicket, probably. It's your age though, right? You need to go and have the go and check what's happening up there.
I need to have all sorts, mate. No, listen, I'm an active man. I'm doing the right thing. Let's not have this conversation. Fuck off. So, Michael Lee, welcome to Behind the Billboard. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Sure.
Michael, you're a creative director at Oatly, running a brand in Europe outside the Nordics. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, when I started 3.5 years ago, that's what I was working with. But because of the growth that we've had, that's been, somewhat exponential, I would say. It's becoming way too much. So now I'm focusing on the UK and Germany, two small markets in Europe.
Yeah, that's a doddle, right? Just UK and Germany. Can I ask where you are today? Where are we talking to you from?
I live in Copenhagen, in Denmark. Okay. So the headquarters of Malmo of Oatly is in Malmo. So I don't know if you know Copenhagen and Malmo, but they just built this bridge like 10 years ago. So.
I saw the TV show.
Okay. Right. Then you know the bridge.
Cut that woman in half.
That's right. Yeah. I've never seen that, but maybe I should.
Oh, it's good. I tell you. Yeah. Hold on to your seat. It's a lively one. That's exciting. So because I was about to say this is a bit of a first today for me and Dan, because we've spoken to many people. We're trying to go beyond classic creatives. So we've done photographers and we've done strategists. And today you're our first ever in-house creative director, which is cool. And obviously, I think it'll be our first broadcast from Copenhagen.
All right.
So that's all very exciting.
Well, that we know of. We don't. To be honest, all of the remote ones, you could have been in Copenhagen. We just don't know.
Yeah. It could have been around the corner in some studio.
That's true.
It's like, we're going to talk about the Department of Mind Control soon. So maybe, it was part of that.
I could also be lying. I could also be next door.
Yeah.
You never know.
Tell you what, I'm just going to...
In this day and age.
Michael, I'm just going to knock on the wall. I don't know if you heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got that.
Yeah, I can hear that.
Good man.
I can hear that.
So we get very excited about your Oatly campaign on Behind the Billboard. It's one of our favorites. We had it in our top 10 or 20 last year. And if we were running... If Behind the Billboard was running in the last few years, I'm sure it'd be there every year, because it's one of those absolutely belting out-of-home campaigns. So we feel, really lucky that you're going to chat to us a bit about it today. So thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Sure. I'm just curious, which campaign are you talking about? There have been several, or just kind of in general? Put you on the spot there.
I think all of them. I think well, do you know what? I think actually what we've found from previous guests is that the campaign has been relatively polarizing. And I think we'll get into that as we talk through some of the campaigns. Some creative purists are kind of thinking it's way too meta, and they're going, it really grates on me. And others, John Hegarty called it out to us on our call, and he said it's fantastic. The work that's coming out and being produced by you guys in house is amazing. So, I think as we go through today's episode, we're going to call out the specific, and it'd be great to hear the insights from you and the process that you went through to bringing these to life. Before we get into that, though, I'd like to. You mentioned that you're in Copenhagen, and I'd like to go even further back and kind of talk about just really briefly your career background that got you to Oatly and ultimately to where you are now in Copenhagen. What was your journey like?
Well, let's see. A brief thumbnail kind of sketch of that is I started out in investment banking of all kind of industries. I studied economics in college because it was practical. It was a sensible thing to study. So I went into investment banking, and after about 6 months, I just realized what a terrible, terrible group of people this is. So I got into advertising.
A much nicer group of people.
Yeah, but they wear better clothing.
Yeah,
they're assholes, but they look cool.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
I thought, I could get on board with that. Then I worked at BBDO for some years, and I moved over to Copenhagen in 2000. So I've been living in Europe for about 21 years. Started an agency, co-founded an agency, worked in Mallorca for a while with John Schoolcraft, the head honcho of Oatly, and then was just kind of working independently for many years. And about 3.5 years ago, John gave me a call. I remember I was sitting in a cafe working on a brief for a bank, and he asked me if I wanted to start a war with the dairy industry all over the world. And I said, yeah, sure, why not? And that's essentially that's essentially how I landed at Oatly.
That's nice.
And you were in Copenhagen already when you got the call.
Yeah, I was in Copenhagen already.
So you haven't lost this wonderful accent you have. I'm sure that's not Copenhagen-ish, that accent.
No.
Are you West Coast?
Yeah. Arizona.
Oh, okay.
So that's that's much more West Coast than say obviously New York or Chicago.
That's quite a difference. That's quite a hot place. I'm going to be really basic. That's a hot place, and now you're in a cold place.
I was just talking to my parents last night. They're running around in shorts right now in Tucson, and it's like -3 degrees here in Copenhagen.
I always do this really boring thing with my kids. It's so dull, but I always go, would you prefer to be too hot or too cold? Right. So are you more of a too cold guy or a too hot?
I have to say, I think they both suck at the extremes. I'll start with that. But I think I prefer to be too cold than too hot.
Always. It's the winner, because at least if you're too cold, you go, right, stick the fire on, get a warm drink down you, and then you feel, but too hot, you can never get away from too hot. No, Dan's shaking.
Exactly.
Dan disagreeing?
What is the point of cold beer if you're not too hot? There's like, I just need cold beer. There's like, that is just the most, I think the best beer in your life is when you're too hot. It's just,
you know what?
The first one goes, in a frozen glass. Oh God, just so good.
What?
But when you're in 45-degree weather, that frozen glass isn't going to do shit.
True.
Yeah, he knows. As you said, this is I love it. So I just say this is a lovely little link to another drink. Shall we dive straight into a bit of Oatly?
No. There's one more thing I want to ask first.
Oh yeah.
Just and I've not actually been to Copenhagen, but I'm sure there is lots of amazing outdoor billboard sites. I just want to know when you're out and about, when you're allowed to be out and about, have you seen any great out of home that's not your own? Out on your travels?
Copenhagen, no. But I guess I should preface all this by saying I've lived in Denmark for about 20 years, but I don't speak Danish, which is terrible. And I have zero excuse for it. I mean, it's been so long. So I basically pay no attention to anything that's in Danish. And so all the billboards are in Danish in Copenhagen.
And so would you say that your exposure to billboards now is more of a social and online experience for the stuff that you see shared by other people?
Yeah.
And so
I would say so.
What's the best stuff that you've seen on your timeline recently?
I think that I was thinking about this morning. There's one out-of-home campaign that I really liked, but it was that fake one for Netflix.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember it, where it was at the beginning of the pandemic, and they used these. I think they were like spoilers. So to prevent people from gathering in public places, I thought that was quite a clever use of just the physical locations to make a point.
Yeah, it was
and I actually liked it better that it was fake.
Yeah, there's been a couple like we've seen a couple of things on timelines recently, and we've been talking about it quite a bit. That the 1 minute briefs guys are doing great stuff during the pandemic, where they're briefing people and keeping people creative. And we saw an amazing mock-up of a poster for Kit Kat recently, and in the same kind of vein, it wasn't real, it was fake. However, it's I think it's an idea that's used the medium, and it's been socialized. It's a great idea. I think as we move forward, and we're going to talk about with some of your work as well, is that the true, from a media perspective, and the guys who really try and quantify both media and creative effectiveness, everyone is going to have to start considering the social views for some of this work to extend the concept beyond the medium it's first intended to be seen on. So the Netflix stuff is great because it kept the message going, and around a time where everyone was quite tuned to we should be at home, and they kind of caught the kind of the mood of the international community at that point, I think.
I mean, when we first started doing these out of home campaigns, we obviously were thinking, okay, oh, well, how are we going to extend this in social? And then we just thought, well, why don't we just take a picture of our out of home executions? So we just started doing that. We just started taking pictures of it and then just making comments on it as if it was just, some random person kind of making comments about these out of home in the captions. And that worked brilliantly well. As a perfect example of just extending the life of the campaign.
And in terms of the kind of the tracking on any of that from a brand perspective, are you looking at the social sentiment as part of the outdoor planning for the next campaign? So you mentioned that you take a photo and you comment on it, and then you're engaging the community in that conversation. When it comes to kind of looking at how well a specific campaign did, are you looking at that as a metric as well?
Yeah, we don't look at specific data or metrics per se, but we certainly kind of pay attention to just the level of discussion and the level of noise that our campaigns create. And we do a lot of like nonsensical stuff, like you've probably seen around London, but we also do a lot of kind of harder hitting stuff. Like the Help Dad campaign, which caused a bit of a firestorm. Anyway, so we always kind of look at things that can just trigger discussion. And in a lot of the campaigns that we've done, it's like Milk with Made for Humans isn't a good example, where we use the outdoor medium to just kind of trigger this broader kind of discussion that then kind of continues in PR and in social. So we're always just kind of we just get a sense of the number of people kind of responding and talking and discussing, and to be honest, like how many complaints we get from the ASA, how many companies are threatening to sue us. These are all just kind of good measures that we're provoking some sort of reaction, provoking some sort of discussion in society.
It sounds like, as a creative, it sounds like the dream department to work in. Like how many complaints did you get? And hey, let's fuck with the message this time. Let's just stay back in time a little bit, because we are definitely going to dip into what you're doing now and whole work. But I just want to go back to when you first started at Oatly, and what was the first billboard you were involved with? Can you remember?
I think maybe this isn't the first one, but the first kind of campaign was It's Like Milk but Made for Humans. I think we had that up back then. We didn't have much budget, so we put that up throughout East London, mostly kind of Shoreditch. And I think for me, what was kind of significant about that was that it told me we're running political campaigns. This is not advertising sugar water to teens or selling low mortgage interest rates. The stuff that we're talking about is striking a chord in these are amongst the issues that society is grappling with at the moment. And that became abundantly clear to me. Also, given the scale of all the comments that we would get, the hatred, the venom, the vile. Some of the comments we get back are quite violent.
Like what? What sort of
but
stuff?
At the same, just like I don't remember in particular, but just I remember reading through some of these comments, and they're mean, they're evil, a lot of them, and quite personal. But at the same time, you have like the other side that is like so happy that there is a company and a brand that is willing to say these things and take a stand and take all take all the heat. So I forgot your question.
Well, no, we were just sort of talking about your first one. And I think, what you were first involved when you got there. Because when I think I spoke to you online when we featured some work on the Instagram. And you told me, or we talked about the Oatly department of mind control. So again, that was something I wanted to talk to you about, or just, well, on my notes, the title says the creative department, and then it sort of goes brackets, the Oatly department of mind control, as coined by John Schoolcraft. So when you arrived, when you got the gig, did you have to be, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, did you have to be slightly brainwashed by John? So, with his wooden book I read about and going, this is how we do it? Or is that a kind of myth and it's just a bit more free than that? What's the deal when you got?
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, it's like the first slide that we have when new employees come to work for us, it just says unlearn everything you know. So it is an attempt to brainwash. But when I first started, I had known John for 20 years before then, and I had known Tony. Tony is the CEO of the company for about 10 or 12 years at that point. So then John and I also worked at the agency that we had in Mallorca. So we were kind of like-minded, but I think to give you a better context, I mean, Oatly was a brand that started in the 90s, and it was only in 2012 when Tony was brought in to be the CEO. And Tony was like this serial entrepreneur guy. I mean, he was like, opening up clubs and restaurants, and was just kind of this cool guy just involved in different things. So for him to kind of join this kind of very conservative at that time, engineer, scientist driven company making something called oat drink or oat milk was quite, I thought that was a bold choice by the board of Oatly at that time.
Yeah.
So the first thing he did was he brought in John Schoolcraft, and one of the first things they did was fire the marketing department, and then put kind of creatives at the center of the company. I mean, not really at the center, but having creatives kind of involved in a lot of the decision making that was going on in the company. So that was the spawn of the Oatly department of mind control. And so the way we work, we do our own strategy. We write our own briefs, which is basically we just sit around and think what could be interesting to do in the UK, in Germany, in Sweden, whatnot. We do our own work, and we approve our own work.
Yes.
So
it's my dream.
There's no there's no filter. There's no halfway meetings with the sales guys. There's no check-in meetings with marketing directors, because we don't have marketing directors. The only guy that can veto anything is Tony. And I don't think he's ever vetoed anything.
Okay. That's really interesting, because so I'm going to jump around a bit. This is a bit later on, Dan, sorry, but the tone of the work is so unbelievably consistent and brilliant. I mean, it's just a masterclass. So if it's you, Tony, and John, so you're doing some stuff and you go, let's do this. Let's do something to do with, I don't know, the budget today, whatever. Do you write some stuff like kind of a bit like a classic creatives? Do you have teams with you, and then you just, do you have a filter where you go, that's not quite like an Oatly ad? You have to do, an Oatly ad as X, Y, and Z. A bit like, I was thinking yesterday, you remember those great Volkswagen ads, that book, and the work became so brilliant that they actually ran an ad saying how to write a VW ad. Do you remember that stuff? And I was starting to think, shit, could you do how to write an Oatly ad? Big pack shot, slightly kooky typeface, massively ironic, knowing headline. It's It's fascinating. But then behind it, is there more of a science?
We have that on the package side.
Oh, okay, well, there you go. Sorry, I missed that. I have my pack this morning, but it's probably a bit too up to date. But, joking aside, do you have that quality control? And who is the final arbiter? Is that you or John?
Yeah, we always talk about that. Our brand is our voice, and that voice kind of flexes everywhere, on packaging, on out of home, print ads, everywhere. And in the beginning, it was kind of our ambition to every opportunity where we could write something on a carton, on an outdoor ad, on a print ad, on even a legal disclaimer was an opportunity to kind of use our voice. And so I think that's what you're kind of picking up upon. It's just that there's this consistency of voice across everything. And I've never written so many shelf wobblers in my entire life. I think prior to coming to Oatly, I don't think I'd ever written a shelf wobbler.
Right.
And then I get to Oatly and I'm writing like 30 or 40 of them.
That's your dream.
And we have an idea that we would create our kind of in-house farm system for developing writing talent, and we would call it the Wobbler Academy.
Oh yeah, brilliant. So actually, on that, sorry to jump in, it's fascinating. How many creatives do you have there, and is it broken down into teams, or are they individuals? How does it work?
Yeah, it's to be honest with you, we're going through some massive growing pains, because early on it was it was maybe about 8 or 9 people in the entire creative department doing all of the work. But now we're global. We're in China. We're in the States. We're almost in every European city. So it's becoming a little bit impossible for us for me to write wobblers for 14 different countries and stuff. So yeah, we've had to hire. We've hired tons of creatives within the past year or two, actually, to keep up. And to be honest with you, it used to be that the brand was so controlled amongst a relatively small group of people that everything felt the same, and everyone was like, okay, that's cool, that's shit, that's cool, let's run that. Now, yeah, I think that's a challenge to maintain that culture, to maintain that touch on every single element.
Yeah.
As we move
and
forward.
Are you worried about the quality control as part of that growth, Michael? Are you worried about the kind of, as you move into all of those international markets, that you don't? I think you just touched on it a minute ago. You've had the benefit of Tony's the only one who can veto it, and he wouldn't, because he's given you the kind of autonomy to and sacking the marketing department and making creative at the heart of it has been a big catalyst for that. But as you grow and in more markets, and the US market is absolutely huge. You're a multi-billion-dollar brand now. Are you worried about that, the quality control and the message being diluted as you have to kind of relinquish that control across a wider pool of people?
I don't know if it's a worry, but it's certainly something that we think about and will really kind of inform how we structure our growth in the future. So we've hired the U.S. operates as its own kind of company. China is the same, and Europe kind of is its own kind of company. And so we've been planting kind of creative directors in the key geographies, and to maintain that kind of consistency of voice.
I wanted to just because I did a massive search last few days, and it's so many great executions. Sorry, Dan, the order is now getting really messed up because I'm jumping around the deck. But I found this one. It says, this oatmeal ad came to Los Angeles looking to make it as a giant billboard on Sunset. Oh, well. And it's on a bench. Now, that is brilliant. The sort of irony and the unaddiness is ace. But then I love the kind of hyper-localization of it. So that's an example, right, of it in certain respects. So you'd have an American creative on that.
Well, actually, John wrote that. That particular headline.
I'm pleased to have Big John's work up.
No, but I think I mean the way we kind of work with out of home, it's we drive our media agency crazy because we I mean, first of all, like maybe you've seen some of the executions in London. We write pretty long headlines on out of home.
Yeah.
When we first started working with out of home, we would drive our media agency crazy. And they came back to us and they sent us this video, with the guidelines for effective use of outdoor media. And it was like this 30-second video. And then they said, use no more than 5 words, have a strong call to action. And all this goes back to that slide I was talking about, unlearn everything.
Yeah.
So we didn't care about any of that. Our starting point was, if it's interesting, people will read it.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. But we also tend to blanket entire areas. I mean, we work at the street level, so we try to find the places within cities where kind of culture happens. I know that's kind of a cosmic term. And then just buy everything.
Yeah.
And when I say everything, I mean everything, because we can make anything work. Like we talked about wobblers.
Yeah.
It's quite easy to make a good wobbler because nobody puts any fucking effort towards that.
No.
And because our brand is our voice, we can make anything work. So what we try to do is just kind of create these like North Korean propaganda zones where you just kind of see us everywhere.
How do you do? Because I fucking love that. It's sort of thing that turned me on most to you. I used to work on Old Street, and I'd see the stuff everywhere. And as a writer, I love the fact that you guys have to write so much. I mean, I love writing, so for me, it's like a dream. This campaign, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. And then the more I saw it, the more I loved it. And then and this was just as this podcast was coming around, and Dan and I are going, yeah, that Oatly stuff is really interesting. So but the way you sort of take over places, how does that work with media partners? Because some of the stuff is just, paintings on walls, then it's like a whole building, then it's a wrap, then it's a traditional billboard. Do you just say, just fucking own the place, I don't care? And then how does it work?
It's a lot of back and forth, a lot of back and forth.
Right.
But essentially, yeah. I mean, we'll say that we want to own this. We want anyone walking on this street to be brainwashed with what we're trying to say, and then. But I think, and then we have just specific questions on every kind of facing that they give us. We want to know how close it is to this. Where is it? What other stores are around? Because we tend to just write specifically to each spot, and that just kind of adds a different dimension to it when you're walking by a billboard and it mentions something.
But the thing I would say about that, though, I think that is the ability for out of home, and I've talked about this quite a bit on the podcast, but to be hyper local and sensitive to a local environment and an audience is exactly what out of home is famed for. That's why people use it. And the most effective use of out of home that we ever see touches on one or two of those things. Either where it is, because it's and you talked about East London being your kind of your test bed and propaganda zone, or the audience that it's talking to, because they're in a mindset or doing something that is, that you are aware of. So they're walking past it at 10 meters away, so that or they're tuned to a mural because they're in East London and everyone's painting walls in London. So I think that because you use that as part of the creative, it works even more. And that's the thing that the reason that I love it is because it's that the stuff that I see, it feels like it's been crafted for out of home, and that's the joy of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So one of my questions was going to be, do you have a set of briefs going like, hey, here's the barista edition, let's do that, right? And you go, okay, got that. But then you go, well, there's no point in telling people about the product because that's your point of view. So then the brief then is, am I right in saying the brief is, it's going to be a mural, it's going to be an old street roundabout, it's going to be 100 foot from a Sainsbury's and blah, blah, blah. That's the brief rather than the product. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, more or less. I think that what's more interesting is where that mural is and what we can say there that will just, I don't know, put a smile on people's faces or think, what a bunch of dicks.
Yeah.
That's kind of the objective.
And so by doing that, because is it easier to do that with murals because they feel more part of the fabric of the area rather than a rotating billboard or a digi one that just changes all the time and feels, I don't know, more corporate in a way? Is that part of the strategy as well?
Yeah. I think that, media agencies are always trying to sell us like the latest kind of technical widget. You could have this light show thing. You could do this with, I don't know, some technical stuff and
drones. Normally drones.
Drones. Yeah. So yeah, we tend to kind of gravitate towards the old school stuff. Just because so much of our brand is our voice, and the less kind of dressing, the more kind of emphasis is on just kind of whatever we want to say. And I mean, there's just something really nice about a painted wall, in 2021. That is quite cool.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant.
And so the brief back to the media agency here in the UK at least. So they put stuff in front of you, and you say, is it a menu? Is it a smorgasbord menu where you say, I want this, 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 and this. I don't want this drone show. Thank you very much.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, I don't think they might not be too happy working with us because we don't really kind of, we don't really respond the way that I guess some of their other clients do. And it's like, we're pretty specific on what we want. And then we have our own local teams actually. So we have an office in the UK, and they will actually go out and look at all the placements and just kind of report back, take pictures, just so we know that billboard is great. That one right across the street for the same price is not so great, so we want that one.
Yeah.
And do they do that with the creative in mind, or do they do that just looking at placements from a media perspective? Have you already done some of the creative development so that they know what they're looking for when they're out there looking at the site?
But it's to some extent, but most of all, it's just like, where, it can be traffic, it can be, just, some placements are just more grand than others. And so we're looking for the more grand kind of areas to
it's fun.
Spray our message.
It's interesting you said, I'm just scrolling through this deck that we put together the work, and I can't find one image which isn't in situ. So if you search on Google, Oatly ads, Oatly billboards, yada, yada, they're all in place. And this is something we've talked about a lot. We just touched on it earlier about social. When you see it there, it just feels more real. And the fact that I love the irony that these media agencies saying, oh, it's too many words and this, that, and the other. Well, if it's a shit ad, yeah, of course, no one's going to read any of that. But the way you're subverting the medium and you play with it and you tickle it, it just becomes more and more engaging. But so is it a policy to, like you said, to PR the work or, to when you share any work, you always show it in situ. You don't show it just as a flat piece of artwork.
I don't know if it's not really a policy, but it's just we tend to send a photographer out during every campaign to shoot the stuff. Just because for posterity, plus we think it looks cool. Plus for social executions, so we have these all over the place, and then people, people across social will be snapping pictures of our out of homes everywhere and posting them online. So I guess a fair amount of those are from consumers.
Yeah, no, it's such a great sort of compliment to what you're doing. That Dan and I talk about this a lot. And when I'm working as a creative, I often get briefs or I sit there and go, well, what is going to make someone take a photo of this, in their own time and then whack it up on Instagram and then that reflects on you. So it better be fucking cool. And I think that again is another real. The thing, if people put stuff on Instagram, you go, that's not very good. But the minute you put something like this up, I don't know, people just go bonkers for it. Again, I'm jumping around the order, Dan, but I think Dan had mentioned we had Dan, John Hegarty and Dave Dye and quite a few very, very famous creatives bigging up your work. But do you get members of the public ever sort of writing into you or praising it? I know obviously you just said they post it, but do you ever have people actively getting in touch? I remember as a kid, I used to write to beer companies and ask for the posters when I was a kid. But do you have people doing any stuff like that?
Yeah, we have people contacting us all the time. And I think that what is driving a lot of that engagement is essentially the subject matter, like we were talking about before, that these are issues that are super important to a lot of people. Like I think you had had one of a digital board we had that said, "Go ahead, eat like a vegan."
Yeah,
like massive.
Yeah, that's in.
I forget what train station.
Is it Westminster,
that was.
Waterloo?
It's Waterloo. Waterloo Motion.
Waterloo.
Yeah.
I think people posted that all over the place, because not only was it was an interesting kind of outdoor ad and 5 words massive on a huge board, but it was also just kind of a triumphant kind of reinforcement of a belief that people have, and so people really get behind it. I think it's interesting. We're always seeing merchandise on the internet, illegal, unlicensed merchandise with Oatly slogans, old campaigns that we've done, headlines on T-shirts.
Really?
And yeah. And it's just a testament to.
Are you sure, Michael?
I think
that's not a little sideline of yours you've not told John about, Michael?
If you go to Michael's Etsy shop, you'll find all the Oatly t-shirts for sale. Yeah,
this is the real reason for why I'm doing this podcast.
There's a whole hang.
You've said it a couple of times about you're in. It's almost like being in political advertising, but there is some political messages inside some of your adverts, right? There is I think just in terms of the way that we're talking to consumers and being at the moment, certainly being a bit more mindful about everyone's mindfulness. Okay. The fact that people are, certainly here in Europe are more conscious of what they put in their mouth and its effect on the environment and where it's come from. And your ditch milk mural in East London, and there is a CO2 message in there, and so there is a political message around climate and the impact that you can have as part of your diet. Is that something that you're passionate about across the board, or is that something that the brand has always taken a strong position on?
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about us as we're a sustainability company that just happens to make drinks and food out of oats. But our mission is to move society forward, to create the societal change, to kind of shift to more plant-based diets. So that's absolutely what we kind of stand for.
Can I on that, because a lot of those messages are on the pack. So this is something I wanted to just talk about briefly. The pack did if you look at the sort of work you've got and then you look at the pack, they're obviously they're one and the same. There was a great quote the other day someone wrote about you actually use the pack as like billboards as well to get more messages across, but did it, if you go in the history of Oatly, did it start on the pack and go on to billboard? Would you say that's fair? Like when you broke your own logo to oat and then a dash, which I love, then lead, then an exclamation mark. So did a lot of the anti-advertising, anti-branding stuff start on pack and then go onto billboards? Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, essentially way back when, at the very beginnings of, the Schoolcraft Peterson era, I guess you can say, there was no money to do any sort of marketing of any. So the package became the only media channel we had to communicate to people. And one of the first things that John and Tony, was just kind of revamp the entire packaging. Well, first it started out with that wooden change book, and then a complete. If you'd seen Oatly packaging before 2012. I did. It just it's what you would imagine.
Yeah, it's very, very traditional and corporate, isn't it?
Exactly. And the funny thing is that when Tony kind of presented the new packaging to the company, they were shocked, and some of the people were crying. Actually, they were so upset, because they thought that this look was just taking the piss out of all of their scientific, credibility, all the engineering that kind of went into this product. And of course, the exact opposite kind of happened. And there were even a bunch of retailers calling the commercial department saying, "There's another company that's using your brand."
Oh, brilliant.
And they're like, no, that's us.
Yeah, there must have been a point on some market shelves where there was the old one and the new one next to each other. The consumers kind of
that must have
someone's going.
That must have absolutely confused people. Which would have been great.
It's been a horrible mistake. I want my Oatly back. Yeah. Oh God. So on that. Sorry, I should stop laughing. It's just such a brilliant story. Thank you for that. But now, okay, so. And can I say, by the way, your over 50s campaign hit a bullseye in this house. So I bought it, and now it had it in my porridge, and my kids read the ads. So that's one more for the effectiveness study. But when I look at it now, it says on one side it's got Understanding Amendment 171. Then on the other side, hey, food industry, show us your numbers. Then there's the boring side. Who writes this stuff? Is it the same writers that write the posters, or do you have a different bunch of writers for that?
It's all of us who writes everything. Okay. Most of the package size are written by John,
right?
Because he's, yeah. I mean, when we say the Oatly voice, it is essentially John's voice.
Right.
I mean, this is his voice. This is how he talks.
Yeah, really.
So it's easy for him to write.
So is it a bit like, because on our show, Dan, I reckon you know where I'm going to go with this. One of the campaigns we have featured over and over, and people have talked about it in such revered tones, is The Economist. And so I'm wondering whether, because David Abbott wrote the first one, and many of them, I'm wondering whether it's a bit like, if you write some copy for Oatly, and you have to show John, it would be a bit like doing an Economist ad to David Abbott. Is it like that? Do you have to show stuff to John, or is it less strict than that?
Well, like in the early days, I was showing everything that I wrote to John, from social posts to whatever, and the thing is, it looks kind of easy, but it's really hard to write in this voice. And I thought, okay, I can get the hang of this pretty soon. It probably took me about 4, 5, 6 months to kind of get the real hang of it. And now we're in the process of hiring writers, because we need writers because we're growing so quickly, and it's one of the most difficult recruits that we have. And so we've had massive conversations around it, and a lot of fantastic copywriters have applied, and the feeling is always that they just are trying to copy the voice. And I think what we kind of recognized is that it's like you either are a punk or you're not.
Right.
You can't be taught to be a punk.
Yeah.
And so we need to find punks who can write.
Yeah, that's a good brief. That's nice and succinct. I think I've spotted one of yours, Michael, or someone who took inspiration from your Danish unappreciation of outdoor. Because there's a headline, one of them says that there's so much more to be said about this product, but we've been told that Spanish people don't read ads in English. Did you write that in Spain?
Yeah, we did.
Good.
That didn't go over too well.
Really? Wow. Tell me more.
Yeah. So, all of our outdoor. I mean, so much of our brand is our voice, and then when we move into countries where English isn't so prevalent, it becomes a bit of an issue for us, and because then we have to translate, and then if you translate, does it have the same kind of tone, the same voice? And it's impossible for us to know because we don't speak Spanish or German or whatever. So we basically just try to push English, and then all the local agencies say no, you can't run English here, and we're like, well, why not? It's like it's a global world. It's 2020. And our target, millennials, they're all on TikTok, and they're all speaking English.
Yeah.
whatnot. And the agency in Spain would say, absolutely not. No, you cannot do this. So we ended up doing a campaign in English, but with that line.
Oh, it's brilliant.
And the thing is, what it says, our agency told us that people in Spanish don't read ads in English. And so the Spanish, many people in Spain were like, you racist, you don't think Spaniards can speak English. But it was kind of impossible for us to say, well, that's not exactly what we said, if you read it closely.
So in effect, right, sorry, Michael, because I've just seen another one here. So in effect, you are just telling the truth, right? So here's another one.
Yeah.
Posters don't have feelings, so you don't have to pretend that you're interested. So in a way, that's true. You're not. That's not made up.
It's true, yeah.
And I wonder whether you're... So by the way, I'm not chipping in to be a writer at Oatly, but I'm just sort of fascinated that you've actually just, we spend an insane amount of money on this fancy billboard. That's what you did. So you just, in a way, you're just telling truths of what you do as a company. You're not making shit up, and you're not trying to sort of, show the people clever tricks. Like you said, it's a bit just do it, isn't it? It's kind of like, it's just an attitude.
It's just brutal honesty.
Yeah. And I think that's why I like the tub of ice cream on the roof as well, because it's a classic special build thing for brands to do. I'm going to stick a car on the roof, so I'm going to stick a car to a billboard. I'm going to put something on the roof of something. So we put a big pot of ice cream up there, but the reason for doing that is because that pot of ice cream is trying to grab your attention. So the headline that you've written for that is, don't look now, but there's a giant tub of ice cream trying to get your attention. It's brutal honesty, which I think is exactly what's required.
Yeah, and I think there's no, I don't know, maybe I'm just kind of backfitting strategy, but I think it all just comes from this complete transparency that we have that goes through the company, especially when you're doing something that we do and making all these claims about, or they're not claims, they're vetted by the UN and stuff about climate change and the climate footprints of various products. You have to be airtight with whatever you say, and you have to be completely transparent, because you will get a million questions about everything. So I think that complete transparency, that just brutal honesty, or just honesty in weird ways, is just kind of part of the DNA of what makes us our brand. I mean,
Sorry, but I suppose it must also, as a writer, be empowering, because you sit there and going, fuck, I can write. That thing when you're writing stuff and they go, hey, just don't mention what happened 2 weeks ago at this thing, or hey, we've got this thing coming up and it's going to really screw us, so don't mention the almond milk. I don't know, whatever. Whereas you're sitting there and you're going, well, if we're transparent, and I read somewhere that, was it Tony put his phone number on the pack at the beginning, so you could ring him if there was an issue. And
yeah, that was John.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And then you've always been threatened to being sued and everything. I mean, I remember I can't quite have the same. I once worked on the army, and we did a campaign where we broadcast live from a war zone, and it was pretty hairy. It was pretty full on, but we did it, and no one got killed, and it was all great, and it was really, really amazing. And ever after that, I personally never worry about what I'm going to say or do. It's just advertising. It's a very empowering feeling, but quite often I get slapped down. But for you, I suppose it is who you are. You sort of, that is your raison d'etre, isn't it? And that, I suppose, leads very quickly for you to be able to say shit which others can't.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to, the structure of the Oatly Department of Mind Control. I mean, because we don't have filters, because we have nobody saying that we need to add a bullet point about nutrients, or, how, these oats come from organic farms, because we work differently, the work is different. It just feels different because you're completely free to say whatever you want. Of course, the flip side of that is like Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. So we're very, although things might seem flippant, everything has been thought through and rewritten 100 times. Because if it goes to shit, it's on us.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? I just want to try and take us back almost full circle, but the brief that you got at the beginning when John asked you to go and work with him on this was, do you want to take on the milk industry internationally and start a war? Feel like the war is well and truly underway. How much abuse have you got from the international milk industry as part of the stuff that you're doing in regards to the advertising side of things? Are there legal and advertising standards complaints that are coming from that side of the business?
I work about as much with lawyers as I do with final artists and designers, because we are being challenged in almost every market from the dairy industry, and it's like we're a company that has been a bit unafraid to kind of wade into these waters, whereas other companies, there are a lot of kind of plant-based brands that have popped up, and a lot of them are independent. A lot of them are run by big conglomerates with big boards that would never let them kind of move into this direction. But we don't really have that issue. It's kind of like the first people over the trench get shot. And so we'll gladly take bullets if that means that more people will hear about this whole kind of plant-based thing. We'll hear about maybe there is some sort of thing called climate change, and the more people kind of are exposed to it, the more they think about it, and maybe they think, oh, maybe these guys, these oat people have a point. So that's kind of a thumbnail approach.
And I'm sure the massive strides that you're making in the US has got you in the crosshairs of the milk department. I can't remember what they're called over there, but the dairy farm industry. Anyway, I think the US is such a big market, and they've had some very, very successful milk campaigns over the years. So I'm sure you're firmly in their crosshairs across the advertising world as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been playing a bit of a chess match with the dairy lobbies. I mean, they're all connected in some way. But I don't know if you know, but part of like the lore of this brand was that in 2013 or 14, the Swedish milk lobby sued Oatly over some terms. One of which is it's like milk but made for humans, and we essentially turned that into a huge David versus Goliath kind of story, gained a lot of momentum, and used that to springboard across Europe. So when we ran the campaign in the UK, it wasn't in Sweden that line I think appeared on the packaging and maybe on some headlines of some print ads, but because that was the line that got us in trouble in Sweden, we thought, okay, we can't use that line in Sweden, but it's not banned in the UK. So that's why we plastered it in the UK. So you could obviously see it as a provocation to the dairy industry in the UK, almost daring them to sue us. We also did the same thing in Germany and now in Spain. They haven't sued, and I think there's probably many reasons. I think one of which is they saw what happened in Sweden and thought maybe that's not such a good idea. But I think in the time since then, there has been there's been quite a significant movement in society towards plant-based. So the tide is shifting. Although, yeah, the dairy industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. They're not just going to let that go away. So obviously,
it's
a big fight.
I liken it to the tobacco industry, and we've talked about a few cigarette ads on the show over the last year, but as I think the dairy industry is responsible for a hell of a lot of CO2 emissions, obviously, and that we've got something here that is actually, as you say, it's made for humans. The change in the tobacco industry when things like the vaping and all the different tobacco or nicotine-based products came out, there's been a massive shift by that industry to try and take a bit of ownership of some of those things. So the big tobacco manufacturers are also now shifting into vaping products and all sorts of other things. Do you think that the dairy industry will jump on the train and try and shut you down by owning you? Do we think that there is a threat there that they're seeing is very real, and they'll come up with their own products as part of their response?
A lot of them already have, absolutely, and I do think that they're a business, so they respond to changing consumer habits. And they see that there's a massive interest in plant-based. There's a massive interest in oat milk, oat drink. So a lot of the big dairy companies have started making plant-based drinks, which we think is quite interesting. My opinion is that it's purely looking at the numbers and looking at the trends. And they can see that dairy consumption has been eroding for the past 25 years and is accelerating. So they need to respond.
And so the reason for the question on a Billboard podcast really is are we expecting them to, the work that you've been presiding over and John's been presiding over has been so successful and I think has been a clear mark in the ground for the brand, and the success of the brand can absolutely is part of the creativity. I wonder if as the dairy industry changes and shifts into this way of, into this product line, whether they'll look at some of the stuff that you've been doing creatively and also try and mimic that, because if they go around it in the same way as they always have done, they're going to look like the Oatly of pre-2012. Their packaging will be very corporate and bland and not
one wants
not
that.
What we're looking at right here.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. One, I think we're seeing a lot of brands, both dairy and non-dairy and plant-based, just kind of mimicking the Oatly style, which I mean, the only mimic things that are successful. So I guess that means we're doing something right. I would say that a lot of the dairy companies are moving into kind of plant-based, but it's impossible for them to tread into a lot of the territory that we have in terms of some of our political work or some activist work. Like they can't really kind of make claims against the dairy industry because they are the dairy industry. So it's a bit impossible for them to do things. I mean, there was one company in Scandinavia. They created a half milk, half oat milk blend. And we're like, what is the point of that?
We're only half as bad as the dairy industry.
This tells you everything you need to know about how the dairy industry operates. It makes absolutely no sense.
Or is
very good.
Yet it was on the product.
Are you sure Oatly haven't launched that and it's just messing with all our minds still? No, I'm joking.
See, this guy, Hugh, you're on to me. You're on to my store of merchandise over here. And my half oat milk, half milk.
Listen, before we go, I just wanted to ask you one last thing, and then I'll shut up and we'll let you get back to work, is of all this work you've created, I mean, you've been there, 5 years? Do you have, or in the whole of the Oatly, the catalogue, is there a poster or a piece of work or a piece of outdoor you feel is your favourite, or John goes, that's the one, that's the fucking boy? I mean, from a quick personal choice, I actually really love You Actually Read This, Total Success, because it's ridiculous on so many levels, but it's so big and iconic. And I'm actually thinking of parodying it for the podcast version of this, and it says, you actually listen to this, success. But do you have a favorite?
Total success.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite?
What's funny is that we always talk about being consistently inconsistent.
Yeah.
So the work out there, you'll see nonsensical stuff, but then you'll see some serious stuff. It's funny. That headline is actually my favorite as well. You actually read this, Total Success, because it's so stupid. It is just so dorky, and then when it's massive on this huge billboard that we paid 100,000 euros for, says nothing about the product. It just says everything you need to know about how this brand operates.
I think we should just end it there.
I'm gonna just give you my favorite, and it's the East London mural that says, "We made this ad look like street art, so you would like it better than if it was just an ad." And I think that is, for me, and it goes back to what I said earlier about Out of Home. It's in a placement in East London, and it's a classic thing to do in East London. People are painting murals. There's lots of, if you stand still, if you've got a brick wall big enough, it's going to be a mural painted on it in East London. That's the way it works. And I think that you're talking to a community, and actually that's also a reason for people to do street art. I'm going to do it in East London because it's really cool and trendy, but it's just, there you go. It looks like a street art. We've made the font drip a bit with paint, and that's just, that's really, really funny. So what about your favorite billboard of all time that's a non-Oatly billboard? Give us your international career from what you've seen on timelines, your favorite one ever.
I don't know if this is it's not a billboard. It was actually something that I saw on the internet, one of these meta things. It was, how people post these flyers up in grocery stores and staple them to telephone poles. Yeah. Like learn how to play the piano, and
you tear off a piece of
there's like cutouts. So this one just had a picture of a recorder. That little, I don't know, what's it called in the UK?
Recorder,
Is it called a recorder? Yeah. Recorder, yeah. And the headline was like, want to learn how to play the recorder. And then on all the little cutouts, instead of a phone number, it just said no thanks. It was the funniest thing I've seen. And I thought that is brilliant. That is just genius.
If anyone,
that someone actually bothered to do that.
If anyone listening was the author of that, please come on the show. We'd love to talk to you.
It reminds me of something, and I may have to cut this out of the podcast, but it reminds me of my favorite piece of graffiti I've ever seen. And it was on the condom machine in the pub I worked in when I was a student at art college. And it said, "Insert baby for refund."
Yeah.
I was just,
I have another graffiti thing that I just saw in Copenhagen.
Yeah.
So maybe bringing us back to Copenhagen. So there's this new section of the city that's being completely gentrified. So it's like the new hipster cool place.
Yeah.
And I saw this graffitied on a wall, and it said, "Vinyl is bullshit. Everybody knows it." And I thought, what a great sentiment.
Yeah, well done. Everybody.
That's very good.
And I mean everybody. We always ask one more thing. Do you have tips? I mean, I think this might be defunct because in a way our whole conversation is the whole point of the Oatly Outdoor is you don't do what most people do with posters, which is, kind of zagging when people zig, but I suppose would that be one of your pieces of advice, unlearn, to people who are about to write post, say someone today is writing poster campaign or they got one on their desk. Do you have any Michael Lee type, things you always abide by? Or
well, I would say it has something to do with the unlearn.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we have to unlearn means that you should never lose what you had to unlearn, if that makes any sense. Never lose your common sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we've all been in meetings where we think, everyone's nodding their head at something completely ridiculous. And you're always thinking, am I crazy? Am I the only one who thinks what we're talking about is completely absurd? But nobody says anything. And this is the corporate world. Yeah. It's like you put on a completely different mask when you enter the building and you talk different, you interact different, your values are different than when you talk to your friends or when you talk to your family. Why?
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
So don't lose your common sense.
I think that's a good one. And Michael, you should go back and listen to the episode we recorded with Dave Banagidi, because he talks about that. And the thing that happens in creative agencies is becoming more and more uncreative. The fact that we are, there's, like you said, in a meeting room, there's just lots of people nodding their heads, or it just stops creativity, and it stops people being. If you stop them being themselves, they'll become robots, and it's kind of anti-creative.
A good lesson to end on. Well, look, thank you again, sir. Absolutely brilliant chat. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope, you'll come on again at some point in the future and talk about some more stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
That would be my pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
Just one thing about the outro, though. Can we not start it with "That was amazing, wasn't it"?
Okay. Do we do that all the time? Well, that was brilliant, wasn't it, Dan? Can't say amazing.
It's so good.
Yeah, well, let's be honest, because it was quite an honest conversation. It really was really good. I mean, I've probably laughed the most in this episode than any before, purely because the whole madness of some of the Oatly work and the way things come around, and just Michael was brilliant, giving us, this is what it's about for me, hearing the stories behind the work, behind what's on the pack, how it comes about. I mean, you and I can do so much research on a project, but when you hear it from him, it's just great. And the things about in Denmark that he can't understand any of the work. It must be a lovely feeling walking around not being burdened with messages.
And the other reason that I like it is that I get to hear lots of other voiceover type voices, and it makes me want to improve my voiceover voice.
Yeah, well, you're sounding a bit distant. Yeah, you're saying I might put Michael in as the one above you. He's got that kind of absolutely.
Yeah, I've got to be careful, because I may lose my voiceover guy.
Yeah. Well, you're doing all right at the moment. You've had no commercial work. You've had no editorial work.
I'm trying to bat it all away. To be honest, the phone hasn't stopped ringing. It's just like, can you come and voice our antifungal foot cream, please? Well, yeah, sure. One day.
It's quite an interesting pod we've just had as well, because in a weird way, that was not quite a recruitment ad, but it was, they're growing massively as a brand, and obviously their work is brilliant.
I smelt your application for copywriting with Michael conversation. You mentioned it a few times. I'm available at the moment for copywriting work if you like, Michael. I love the brand. Here's the product here. I've got it. Oh, just so happens I've got one on my desk in front of me, Michael. Look. Oh.
And my laughter was a bit like Chandler Bing on Friends, his work laugh. It was kind of slightly over.
You were kind of twiddling your hair and you kind of sipping on your oat drink.
I'm not sure if you saw the placard I was holding up. It said, "Please, Michael, give me a job. I'm desperate." But I did it in their typeface, so it's quite nice. No, I'm not. I did think, though, for people listening, I mean, hopefully we have a lot of good writers and art directors listening, creatives. It's fascinating, joking aside, the tone and getting it right. And it, like you said, only certain people get it. So, good luck out there, kids.
Good luck, kids.
Should we call it a day? It went a bit flat there. Good luck, kids. I mean, good luck, kids, yeah? End of podcast.
Cue the music.
By the way, that sting you did with Dave Bonagidi and the music comes in, my daughter actually looked up from her Marmite on toast and went, "What's that?" And I said, "That is our sting."